I hope everybody is having an amazing day so far. Sorry, I'm going to try to get good lighting. I am tucked away inside here so that my kids won't interrupt me, but we'll give everyone a minute. I know most of you are actually going to be catching the replay on this, but I put a ton of good work into this presentation and I cannot wait to share it with you. So what I'm going to do is I will share my screen. And this should show up very well for everyone. And then let me start my presentation here. And bear with me. Oh, not supposed to be on that screen yet. There we go. Now we're on the right screen. I might have to move my window around a little bit as we go through it. But what we're going to dive into today is going to be our hormones, our hormone health, and kind of where we store body fat in relation to the hormones that are kind of out of whack. And like the question you always get asked is like, is it possible to spot target body fat? And the answer is yes, absolutely. Because where we store body fat really signifies hormonally where we have an imbalance. And that's really going to what we type today, right? So like how hormones affect body fat storage, why our digestion is actually one of the most important pieces for this, the relationship with insulin, cortisol, and kind of like that dreaded spare tire look. So if you're carrying a lot of weight in the midsection area, estrogen and how to get your legs lean. So, like if you have a pear shape or you traditionally have a hard time losing weight in your legs, it's usually due to an estrogen issue. And then lastly, putting it all into practice because there's going to be a lot of good little like nuggets and little tidbits and takeaways. So I kind of put it together in a game plan for you at the end so you can walk away with something that you can actually implement. So we'll probably take about I know I said longer, but it'll probably take us about a half an hour to go through everything. I want to respect your time and not kind of drone on with everything. Okay, so let me toss my window up there. That one should be okay. So different areas of your body have a higher concentration of receptor sites for certain hormones, and that's how we really identify which hormone is out of whack by where we're carrying excess body fat. This really only comes into play noticeably as you get leaner. So, for instance, if you have 100 pounds to lose, just focusing on weight loss overall is going to be the main goal. But as you get down to that last like 10, 20 pounds, that's when you'll really notice those certain areas where it's like that trouble spot, the last place it's going to go. And that's going to really be tied into hormone health. Okay. So, like I said, when you have those trouble areas, especially when you get leaner, it really shows us which hormone we should focus on for fastest response, especially in that particular area you're trying to spot target. And as a general rule, insulin will correlate with your upper back and your love handle area. Cortisol traditionally with belly fat, so around the belly button area, that kind of like bulge in the front, and then estrogen, like the back of your arms, your triceps, as well as your hamstrings. And this is actually the one that I had the most trouble with. So we'll be able to dive in that as well, but not just for women, it affects men too. And those are really the three that we're going to tackle today. Okay, so insulin, cortisol, estrogen. Obviously, there's a lot more hormones than that, but for simplicity's sake and losing body fat, these are the three that are really the most important and come into play the most often. There's also like growth hormone, testosterone, a plethora of other stuff we can dive into, but we're going to keep it simple for you today, okay? And then really, the order of importance that we're going to really start with is getting digestion fixed first, then moving on to improving insulin sensitivity, and then balancing out your cortisol levels, and then finally improving the detoxification of estrogen in the body. Okay, so that's kind of like the order of how we're going to tackle things. And when you're working through hormonal health, that's usually the order we would work in as well. And you'll see why when we get to the further slides. So part two, this is really about digestion and detoxification. So I think most of our detoxification takes place in the digestive system as well as our liver. When it's not functioning properly, we won't be able to remove the toxins and balance our hormones properly, okay? And there's many compounds that will actually mimic hormones in your body, though they are not hormones themselves. So we really need to prioritize detoxification to help remove these so that we not only look our best, but we feel our best as well, okay? And there's going to be a lot of things that can affect it. So inflammatory foods, sugars, processed foods, stuff like that. Environmental toxins. This is going to be things like smoke, fragrances, like things coming, think from the air that you would breathe in typically. And oh, let me move this guy here so you can see everything. Ingested toxins. And now for all of you ladies, this is going to be like the products that you put on your body, skincare routines, makeup, soaps, all that stuff can really affect hormone health. Your stomach acid levels, because that's really going to play into how well you digest your food. And if you're not digesting, you're not absorbing, or we're not actually getting everything that we should from it. How properly hydrated you are, because every system in your body is going to function better, especially detoxification, when we're properly hydrated. And then there's a bunch of supplements we can take to help amplify this, some that are more basic, some that are more advanced, but I'll kind of go through my recommendations as we cover each step as well. Okay. So really, when it comes to digestion, think of it as like the first line of defense for keeping our hormones balanced and our body functioning at its best. But we want to consider not only the foods that we're eating and if they're causing any issues. So, for instance, dairy can be a really healthy food. I recommend it for a lot of people. But if you have a sensitivity there and it causes inflammation, it's not going to be the right one for you, right? And second is going to be how well our body actually processes this. So, this could be like if you're gluten intolerant or like with the dairy, or you just have a bad digestive system. Maybe you used to be like a vegan or vegetarian, and now you're starting to eat meat more, and you're noticing you're having an issue there. That can happen too. Okay. Stress does a big number on our gut health. And really, just with age, we have decreased stomach acid levels and stomach function. A lot of the times you'll see older people and they won't have as much of a desire to eat meat. And that's one of the reasons why. Detoxification, it's a vital physiological task. You would literally die if your body wasn't detoxifying daily, okay? And this is all going to revolve around your liver. It's going to process the weight process, the foreign compounds, and other toxins such as spent hormones that your body no longer needs and removes them, okay? There's three phases of detoxification, and our enzymes play a primary role in detoxification. Food really supplies the raw ingredients that we need for this. Okay, so it's going to provide the antioxidants, the amino acids, and the fiber necessary for the liver to properly detoxify, which is why digestion and detoxification go so hand in hand. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So really, the key takeaway is that it's not just what you're eating, but how well you're digesting your food that matters the most, because I can have your plan laid out for you. And in theory, it's going to nail everything. But if your digestion is, say, working at 50% of capacity, you're actually only taking in 50% of the amino acids, 50% of the protein, 50% of the fiber. So you're actually under eating on all the vital nutrients that you need. So your body's not going to be functioning optimally, right? And the best thing that we can do to really aid with our digestion and our detoxification, sorry, and one of the easiest things is just eat anti-inflammatory foods. So real whole foods, typically everything that we put in your plan will be based around that for the most part. Obviously, there's going to be some exceptions, but typically that's how we want to focus on things. And then we want to make sure that we really get enough protein, because it's one of the main building blocks for our digestive system, especially with meat, because it has typically more zinc in it. And zinc is one of the main building blocks for hydrochloric acid, which is your stomach acid, which actually breaks down your food. So zinc, stomach acid really go hand in hand, because you need zinc to make stomach acid, and you need stomach acid to break down the food that contains the zinc. So it really goes hand in hand there. So that can actually be one where if you're having issues with your digestive system, supplementing with zinc can actually go a long way. This will tie into estrogen later too, but just as a side note. And then really what I would recommend supplement wise here is if you are having digestive issues, and if you're not sure, ask and I can help you with this part, but you want to supplement with glutamine, okay? And we really want to saturate the tissue. So we want to do our stomach lining, our intestines. Glutamine is a main building block of all those tissues. So what we would do for a gut health protocol is we would actually take 80 grams a day for 10 days. This really saturates the tissue, help repair any issues. So if you've ever heard of like or suffered from leaky gut syndrome, where food is actually making its way into the bloodstream and causing inflammation, this would help to seal up those holes, okay? And then afterwards, after you do that initial saturation of the tissue, you would continue with like a 10 or 20 gram dosage a day. I always take 20 grams a day, and I just take it with my post-workout shake, where you can just break it up. It's a very inert, if you haven't before, it's just like, it's kind of sandy in texture, but it doesn't taste like anything. But that would be the protocol that I would use supplement wise, as well as the anti-inflammatory foods. And if you're not sure if this is the issue for you or not, again, just reach out. I can help with. Okay. The next one we're going to dive into is going to be insulin. So, anyone that's on a weight loss journey, this is actually going to be your main area of focus for hormones after we've tackled digestion. Okay, so remember, this all works in order. And really, when our upper back and our love handles are the areas that are the biggest challenge, that's really going to be indicating that your insulin levels are out of whack. So, think this is the way it works. I try to make this as simple as possible, and I have a good analogy too. When we eat foods, especially those that contain carbs, it all gets broken down to glucose. So like it all becomes sugar at the end of the day, okay? Our body releases insulin to help push that sugar into our muscles so that it is used for energy. It can get stored in the liver as well for energy later on, but basically the glucose is just an energy source. But what happens when you have too much coming in? So think of it in the context of like cars in a parking lot. If I have 10 people that come into a parking lot that has 10 spots, the parking lot is now full. If I have 12 cars come in, now I start to create a traffic jam. And this is what's happening when you have too much energy coming in that your body cannot store. So what happens is now you store it as body fat to be used later. And love handle, upper back are the two areas where it will get stored most because it has the highest concentration of receptor sites for insulin. So that's where it's going to show up. Okay. And this one, it's the most common. It's actually the easiest one to fix because first, we just need to stop the incoming insulin foods from coming into our system. So think if you've traditionally eaten a lot of sugar, too many carbs, all the junk, we need to stop that coming in. So we need to stop the cars coming into the parking lot so that they have room to release spots. We have room so that cars can leave and spots start to open up. Okay, this is called insulin sensitivity. Basically, how sensitive is your tissue to new insulin and glucose coming into it? Okay, when you actually eat yourself into diabetes, it's called insulin resistant. You can no longer take it in properly. So you start to have issues with your blood sugar. Okay. So that's why you can eat yourself diabetic so that you fix it by the incoming food. Okay. So we want to keep our blood sugar balanced because this is also going to mitigate any spikes in blood sugar that we would then have to release insulin to bring back down. Okay. So think blood sugar goes up, insulin goes up, brings it back down. But we don't want those spikes to keep happening when we're having this issue with insulin resistance. And the second thing, and this is the cool part with this, is we can actually add more spots. We can build new parking lots. And we do this by focusing on resistance training and adding more muscle. Because muscle comes with a ton of fresh new spots for that insulin. It's very insulin sensitive. So we can take in a ton of extra sugar. This is one of the reasons why the more muscular you are, the easier it is to stay lean. And you'll find that as you get leaner and add more muscle through your journey, it's easier to maintain it than it was to build in the first place. And that's what. Right? Next one is going to be cortisol. So we all know this is the stress hormone, right? We're all very familiar with cortisol, and it actually goes really hand in hand with our insulin levels because when insulin gets spiked, cortisol actually gets released to help blunt that. Okay, just as a side note, but improper sleep, inflammatory foods, stress levels, and hydration are all going to play a huge part in balancing our cortisol levels. And the thing with cortisol is we actually want it elevated sometimes. So, for instance, in the morning, it's one of the hormones that helps to wake us up. The big problem is when it's either elevated all day long or at like the wrong times in the evening. And now, unfortunately, modern life does not make it easy for us to keep this hormone balance because we're constantly battered with stress inducing situations, informations, food, it's the news, like all these things bleed well into the evening when we're supposed to be winding down. So, really, one of the best ways that we can actually balance this is by first making sure that we're getting proper sleep. And this means not only getting enough sleep, but making sure that it's deep, regenerative, and uninterrupted. Now, I know sometimes the kids are going to wake you up. I had the same thing happen at my house. But kids aside, you should be able to fall asleep easily and sleep through the whole night without waking up even to pee. Okay. If you find that you're having trouble with that, you're waking up or you're having trouble falling asleep, supplementing with magnesium and taurine would actually be great additions to your nighttime routine. Typically, with magnesium, it's going to depend how deficient you are. And honestly, most people are, but 500 milligrams is a good way to start. Sometimes we would even go up as high into 2 grams, and you can actually get a lotion. So there's a cream magnesium as well that can help you fall asleep even faster. So some really cool stuff we can do with magnesium. Also, focusing on your emotional and mental health are going to go a long way to help balancing your cortisol. So, you hear me always talking about the fifth step, which is our emotional and mental health. Okay. So, things like walking, meditation, journaling, gratitude exercises, they're all great examples of helping to balance our emotions. Also, if there's any unresolved traumas or triggers or self sabotaging habits that are going like that we haven't dealt with yet, dealing with those is going to help bring cortisol levels down. Because the thing about it is, you can think about a stressful situation and have a release of cortisol. So nothing actually has to happen. It can be happening just in your mind, and it's still going to have an effect on you. Okay. So taking care of your emotional health and getting this area balanced is going to be huge when this is your trouble area. Okay. The other thing that we can really do is keeping our blood sugar balanced and stable with protein dense meals that are spread steadily throughout the day, and also getting in enough fiber because it helps slow down the digestion of the meal, which helps keep insulin and cortisol nice and stable. So I think ideally, the more stable we can keep it throughout the day, the better our insulin levels are going to be, also the better our cortisol and inflammation levels are going to be. Okay. Sometimes this will get elevated though. Like if you have a workout, your cortisol levels are going to spike along with inflammation. That's part of the response to exercise, but the mitigation afterwards is going to be beneficial. So the amount that it spikes, it'll be lower later on because of it. Okay. Just as a side note there. So not a bad thing. We just want to make sure we have a nice spike early in the day, and then we're gradually. Okay. So that's cortisol. The next one is going to be estrogen. So this is a huge one for pretty much everyone. Like, the world that we live in screws us in this department. Okay, so the highest concentration of receptor sites is actually going to be found in our hamstring, so the back of our leg, and our triceps, the back of our arm. Okay, and normally the biggest issue with this actually comes from xenoestrogens, which are compounds that mimic estrogen and bind to receptor sites in the body. So, for instance, if I have a receptor site here that estrogen is supposed to attach to, and then it activates something, these compounds will mimic it and take up those spots so estrogen can't do what it's supposed to do. Okay, because it actually does a lot of healthy things for you, like bone health, memory, brain function. So there's a lot of positives to estrogen, just not when it's out of whack, especially with toxic foreign estrogens. Okay, so we've all heard of like BPAs, parabens. These are going to be the ones that we're actually focusing on the most because they're the ones we have the most control over externally. But then we also have internal estrogens. Okay, so things that will really contribute here are the more body fat you have, the more aromatase your body is going to produce. And this actually converts testosterone into estrogen. So even for you ladies, you need to have some testosterone, but this will really throw that level out of whack and put you in more of a fat storage state. And a good example of this is like people that take steroids, for example. When they come off of them, you start to take steroids and it jacks your testosterone. Your body starts to produce estrogen as well to try to balance it out. When you remove this source, so you go off, if you don't do it properly, estrogen stays elevated and it starts to create issues. So you've probably heard of guys with like, they're called bitch tits, but when you have like big puffy boobs, this is from aromatase. Okay. So not good, and not good from a body fat storage standpoint. Okay. And then the other thing is when our digestion is impaired, we're not able to metabolize estrogen effectively. And this will actually increase our risk for cancer. So specifically prostate and breast, which we definitely want to avoid. Okay. So this is like more of like a seriousness from the health side, not just the aesthetics. Okay. And this is what I was talking about earlier when I said it's not just about how you look, but it's also about your health and how you feel. Okay. So we're going to treat estrogen dominance with a two-pronged approach. And the first one is avoiding the exposure in the first place. So switching to natural products for your skincare and hygiene is one of the best things that you can do. And actually, there's a company called the Environmental Working Group. They have something called the Skin Deep Database. I put the link on the left here. What you can do is you open that site up, you can put in your product. So if this was my shampoo, I just put in the name and it's going to show me all the compounds inside of it and how toxic and what they can cause. So it might come up with, this red dye A, and it's a 9 out of 10 on the toxicity scale because it causes cancer. You can go through all of your products that way and kind of identify which ones are contributing the most. And then with BPAs, moving to BPA free plastics or ditching them altogether in favor of like stainless steel or glass for either food storage or water, especially when you're heating things. So if you're heating things in plastic Tupperware that contains BPA, it's going to leach into your food. So it's better to either use glass or put something in it when it's cold and then transfer it to a plate or a bowl instead. Okay. So just little things like that can go a long way. And then also removing things from foods that you're eating from aluminum cans. And then wherever you can, as long as the pocketbook agrees with it, getting organic fruits and vegetables is going to limit your exposure to these toxins as well. Okay, so that's step one, limiting the amount actually coming into your body because we're bombarded all day. This is a toxic environment these days. Okay, part two is going to be support the detoxification of estrogen. So basically, estrogen elimination, it's a complicated process, but to like bring it down in a nutshell in a simplified version for you, estrogen's metabolized by the liver. It's sent down one of three pathways after that. One which is good, one which is nah, and one which is terrible, and it recirculates. Okay. So we want to set ourselves up so that we have healthy gut, adequate fiber, so that we're actually eliminating this stuff properly. Okay. And the best way to really support this process is have good gut health, which we covered in part two, because what will happen is when that estrogen comes to be removed from the body, you won't have proper digestive health, and the bond can actually be broken. And now that toxin recirculates into our bloodstream. And that's when you really start to come into more risk for cancers and stuff like that. So we really want to have that good gut health, okay? And then the other thing that we can do is take magnesium, which I mentioned earlier, and also vitamin D. And these are so important because honestly, deficiency of them is so widespread, especially with vitamin D, because all of our cells have receptor sites for D3. So vitamin D will actually improve every function in your body. It's one of those like blanket supplements that everyone can take and it will make everything better. The thing with vitamin D is because it's fat soluble, it can build up over time. So if you are supplementing with it at high doses, I strongly recommend you get your blood levels checked before and after you start a big cycle, just to make sure that we don't get too high. But odds are you're low, and a good maintenance dose would be about 5,000 international units. Most pills that you get will about 400, maybe 1,000 if you're lucky. You can find them in 5,000, but it's rare. But just know that typically the dose you're taking, if it's 100 or 200 IUs, is fuck all. It's not enough. You need to take more. And as I mentioned earlier, about 500 milligrams for magnesium. Okay. So putting all this together into like an actual plan of action. Okay. I know we covered a lot of stuff here. I wanted to keep it a little bit simpler so that it's stuff we can actually do. Okay. So think trying to tackle all of this at once, it's going to be too much, just like anything, right? We can't do it all at once. So what we're going to do is one step at a time, we're going to work through this. And I wouldn't actually worry about spot targeting body fat until you get closer to your weight loss goal and those areas really start to show. Because right now, like if you have more than 30 pounds to lose, just focus on weight loss. Focus on weight loss overall. Don't worry about spot targeting because you're going to lose it everywhere anyways. And I would follow things in the order that we covered them. Okay. So what you would do first is to make sure that your nutrition plan is set up properly, which we've already done for you anyways. But more importantly, that you're being consistent with it. And if you find you're having issues with your digestive health, go through that glutamine protocol that I recommended, the 80 grams a day for 10 days. This will help boost digestion. You can also take zinc and digestive enzymes to help you with this as well. Okay. The second thing is we want to increase insulin sensitivity so that we can eat our carbs and sugars and not feel bad and use it for energy instead of storing it as body fat. And we're going to do this by making sure we get all of our workouts in, because again, we want to build more muscle mass. That's going to give us new receptor sites for the insulin. And then we want to decrease the amount of junk and sugar that's coming in, keep our blood sugar nice and balanced so that the tissue and cells that we already do have can become more insulin sensitive. Okay. We don't want diabetes, so let's make this a priority. Third is, I say this all the time, but we want to make sure we're properly hydrated. Water is one of those things that's so simple to ignore, but when we are properly hydrated, it's going to improve all the functions in our body, but especially for what we're talking about today is detoxification. And this isn't going to include losing body fat. So think of it this way. We store toxins primarily in our fat. We do this to keep it away from our vital organs. Okay. When we lose body fat, what happens to the toxins that are inside of it? They get released into our system and now need to be processed and eliminated. So if you're losing a lot of weight, 5, 10 pounds a month. That's 5, 10 pounds of fat that you're losing, and all the toxins stored inside are now circulating in our bloodstream. So, like, don't you want to remove those properly, or do you want to get sick? Or do you want to slow down progress because it's going to get restored in your body fat because you have a shitty digestive system and you're not hydrated? So focus on hydration so that we can actually eliminate this stuff for good. Okay. Fourth is making sure that you get not only enough sleep, but the right sleep where you're sleeping steadily throughout the night, because this is going to keep cortisol in check. Okay. Get the stress hormones balanced. It's also going to improve your mood. It's going to help with cravings in the morning. And again, because of all that, it's going to increase fat loss. It's hard to lose body fat when our cortisol levels are elevated. Okay. So keeping this balance is, again, going to help boost body fat loss. Fifth, go through your personal care products on that Skin Deep database that I told you about. And if you need the link, just ask me, I can send it over to you. And literally what I do is I wouldn't go out and remove everything all at once. As stuff comes up, my shampoo bottle's done, and I knew it was a toxic one, I'm going to replace it with something better. And I would just systematically work through each product. And I'm going to be a realist here. There's going to be some makeups that you're not going to change because you love them and they're toxic as fuck, but you still want to use them. Okay, so go for it. But all the ones that you can change them over because it adds up. And it does. Maybe you want to go hog wild and replace it all. Awesome. I don't really use anything. I'm a boy, so it's a little bit different. But I just use the kids' moisturizer, and that's good enough for me. But replace the ones that you can. Okay. Six. Excuse me. Six, I would strongly consider adding vitamin D and magnesium to your supplement routine. And if you don't have a supplement routine, message me and I can help put together a customized one for you. I've done this with quite a few of you already. But if you don't have one and this is something that you really want to start to focus on, is like this would almost be like a step 6 after we get our nutrition, our training, our water, our sleep, and our emotional health dialed in. This is kind of like a number 6 to amplify. It is not it is not a quick fix. You cannot skip any of the other steps and fix it with supplementation, which is why I never recommend it when anyone starts. Because we want to get the good habits down first, then we add this as an amplifier, okay? But vitamin D, 5,000 IUs, magnesium at 500 milligrams is a pretty good blanket statement, along with like glutamine, 10 to 20 grams for everybody. That'll be beneficial for every single person in here. You could also start to look at fish oils, and those can actually help with cortisol levels, inflammation, and insulin too. Okay, but I can definitely put together a custom supplement plan for you. Just message me in the app, and I will help get that set up for you. Okay. And then lastly, as always, the biggest part is to always focus on your emotional and mental health, because if it's not dialed in, and we have those demons and those bad habits and those self-sabotaging things that keep popping up, you're never going to be consistent with this other stuff. So we can put the best plan, supplements, this, we're tackling this hormone. It's like the greatest plan in the world. And if you're not emotionally healthy, you're not going to be consistent. And if you're not consistent, it won't. Consistency is all the name of the game, and that comes from being emotionally healthy. Okay, so always focus on this. Just think of it as just like doing your workouts. You work out 3 times a week. You should be focusing on your mental health actually every day for at least 10 minutes. Okay, meditation, journaling, walking, however it works for you. You need to put it into your routine. Okay, and really, my biggest takeaway from all of this is that knowledge is power and helps us to change, but it only helps us if we actually do it. Because just going through this presentation, hearing some awesome takeaways, and then doing nothing about it is not going to help you. You will not get better. You will not become a better version of yourself, and nothing will change you. Okay. So literally, don't get overwhelmed. Work through these steps one by one, incorporating them into living your best damn life. Okay. So get number 1 down. Once we're solid with number 1, get number 2 down. Once we're solid with number 2, get number 3 down, and so on and so forth. Okay. So I hope that this was beneficial for you. I'm already putting together another presentation for next month that I'm super excited about, and we're definitely going to make this a monthly habit. So super excited for that. I hope all of you have a beautiful evening, morning, afternoon, whenever you're catching the replay on this. I tried to keep it short and sweet for you, but I hope it was informative. And if you have any questions about any of the stuff that we covered, just message me. You can either ask in the group or you can message me privately on the app as well. Okay. Have a beautiful day.